Welcome back to the Seneca Sports Lounge. It's episode 2 of our draft coverage for the Sabres, presented by Seneca Resorts and Casinos. With Marty, I'm Brian. First episode, we dove into the defensemen who are at the top of the class this year. This episode, we're going to look at the best forwards available should Buffalo choose to go in that direction. Of course, the Sabres do have the first overall pick, Marty. 4th time they're going to have that in their franchise history, and they've also got a little bit to work with after that in what could be a really busy couple of days for Kevin Adams and company.
Absolutely. If we remember last year, they drafted Jack Quinn in the first round, and then they went with J.J. Peterka in the second round. They wanted to get him at the end of the first round, tried to make a deal, but they still got J.J. in the second round. So those forwards are going to be in the prospect ranks, but you got to add to that forward bank, and there is some really good forwards at the top of the draft or maybe later in the first round and in the second round this year.
And Marty, we'll keep the focus on the forwards this episode with Chris Peters from the Talking Hockey Sense podcast. Chris, it's great to have you with us, and it was a great, albeit somewhat shortened season for Michigan. I suspect that's where we're starting when we're diving into forwards available, whether it's for Buffalo at number 1 or just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where all the skills at, apparently. It's in the University of Michigan, and 2 great forwards from there, and certainly a lot of scouts live in Michigan, so it's a perfect place for them to see all those guys.
Is Matty Beniers the clear number 1 forward in your opinion?
He is for me. I mean, I think that he just impacts the game in more ways than any other forward in this draft. He's a great two-way player, high-end hockey sense, plays with speed, plays with great work ethic. I mean, he just competes, and I think that ultimately allows you to kind of set the identity of your team. I think he's a guy that drives your team. He brings everybody along with him. And really, you think of all the great freshmen at Michigan this year, and he wasn't the Big Ten Rookie of the Year, but he was Michigan's Rookie of the Year this year as selected at the end of the year banquet. So, I mean, he's a pretty impressive player.
I do have to ask about the injury suffered at the World Championship. What's that looking like moving forward?
Yeah, it seems like he's going to be good to go. I think that he's expected to play at the World Junior Championship pre-tournament camp in Plymouth coming up really soon at the end of the month, actually the day after the draft. He'll be out there competing, and he is expected to be a participant in camp.
William Eklund, what would you say about him?
Wow, I mean, there's a lot you can say. I mean, to be that young and to play professionally at the SHL level and to play as well as he did. I mean, he was a go-to scorer for his team. He had a lot of clutch goals, made a lot of big plays. He's got good speed, good hockey sense. I mean, to be able to play professionally at that young of an age, you have to know how to play the game. I thought that he transitioned into that so beautifully. And he's a guy that I think, you give him a little extra time, let him dominate at that level. He's going to take that next step, and the upside for him is spectacular. He's the number 3 guy on my board for a reason. I think that he's a really impressive talent, and it starts with that skating skill and hockey sense.
Is his size a question mark right now at 5'10" compared to the other forwards at 6'2" and 6'3"?
Yeah, I think it depends on if you're a team that believes that he can be a center. It is his natural position, but he played primarily on the wing. I think he's probably more likely to play on the wing. Obviously, you want your centers to have a little bit more size, but we've seen guys at his size compete. I think his skating is good enough to allow him to play at that position, but I would understand if teams wanted to see him more on the wing. Obviously, with him playing there this year, they have a better feel for him in that position.
How good is Kent Johnson, and what's the big difference between him and Beniers?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's all about skill. I mean, he's one of the most entertaining players in this draft. He is a magician with the puck on his stick. He was the BCHL and CJHL MVP last year, goes right into Michigan, and then instantly does all the things that we saw at the junior A level last season. And the skating isn't necessarily as high end. I think that's one of the things that holds him back. But you look at the way that he plays, he has the puck on his stick an awful lot. He makes a lot of plays. A really good passer. He's kind of a pass shot threat as well. So you never quite know what he's going to do. And I've always enjoyed what Straussman, the goalie from Michigan, told me when he was in practice with him. All the guys would have maybe 2 or 3 options, but Kent Johnson had 5 or 6. And that's kind of the difference between him. He's such a creative player.
Dylan Gunther really looked good at the under 18. What's his upside, and what does he bring to an NHL club?
Yeah, I think he's one of the more dynamic players. He's not quite dynamic at the level of a Kent Johnson, but he has a little bit more pace. He can play with more pace. I think that we saw him. He's more of a finisher, I think, whereas Kent Johnson might be a bit of a driver. So you see Gunther, he's got a great shot. He passes extremely well. On his team in Edmonton, he was playing with a lot of veteran players. So they were deferring to him more and letting hhim be the finisher. Those guys were kind of driving play. So that's the one question I have about Dylan Guthrie. Is he going to be a play driver at the next level? Because we didn't necessarily see him do that at the World Under 18s, where he was phenomenal and produced. But there were a few kind of things that I wanted to see more from him in that tournament, especially that play driving element. But a very talented player, high-end offensive skill. I think he's going to go very high in this draft.
Chris, we've just quickly gone through your top 4 forwards available in this draft through your rankings. Is there a chance, in your opinion, that Mason McTavish might actually go ahead of all these guys?
Absolutely. I think that when you look at Matty Beniers and Mason McTavish, I think those are the guys that you feel most comfortable as centers and guys that can be play driving centers. I think the thing that Mason McTavish does that separates him from the group is he is nasty to play against. He's got some physicality. He's good defensively, makes a lot of plays. Doesn't quite have the pace of Beniers, which is why I think there's a bit of a separating factor between those two. But a lot of scouts that I talk to, Mason McTavish is going to help you win hockey games because of how hard he plays and the way that he handles himself at both ends of the ice. I think he's a really impressive player who played professionally this year, and I think that really helped his game take it to the next level.
Chris, obviously the Sabres hold the number 1 pick. If they go at the forward position, who do you think they would take?
I mean, I think that the best option would be a Matty Beniers. I mean, I think that he would be a great complement to Dylan Cousins. You have two guys that can play with pace, that give you some strength down the middle, that build the foundation, where things are going to go for the team going forward. You need to have strength at that center position. I think that's Matty Beniers in it, but I could also see, Eklund, Gunther, those type of players. I think they'll be available, obviously, but also a chance to potentially take your team to the next level in terms of a more dynamic element. I think those guys can offer that, and they're very exciting as well.
It's been an impressive year for you as well, Chris, just branding Hockey Sense and doing all of this work again. I mean, you've been doing it for years, but take us through what Hockey Sense is all about and where people can find it.
Yeah, well, Hockey Sense is my new Substack site. I'm independent now, so after some great years at ESPN, I went the independent route, and I have a lot of draft content. It kind of allows me to do all the things that I want to do and none of the things that I don't enjoy. So, that's kind of the nice thing. But you can find it at hockeysense.substack.com. It is a premium subscription service. And I also have a podcast that goes along with that, which is nice and free. And that is Talking Hockey Sense. We have great guests. We're going to have a lot of draft coverage on that. I answer questions every week. So it's been a lot of fun to do it. And yeah, it's been a wild year for everybody, but going independent on top of that has been crazy, but I've really enjoyed it.
Congrats on the terrific work. Well done.
Thanks, Brian.
There's Chris Peters from Hockey Sense. Of course, that wraps up the episode, Marty, on the forwards. We still have lots to get into as far as what may happen in rounds 2 and 3. There's always guys that seem to fall out of the first round, and then teams are really happy to get them in round 2 and 3. We'll do that with Corey Pronman from The Athletic. It's all part of our Sabres draft coverage presented by Seneca Resorts and Casinos.